Gareth, I'm sorry. He's on a nice cruise and no doubt enjoying himself. Okay, first of all, before we just get started, apologies to members with the bit of a mix-up with the agenda papers, where the original ones that went out, we had two of the same, so we'll just pull something to the next meeting. Okay, right. Have we got apologies? I know you've got Gareth.
Councillor Mark Howells.
Okay, right. Thank you. Okay, declarations of interest? No. Okay. Now, minutes of the last meeting. Is there any points of accuracy that anyone's got? No? Okay. Norma.
Just one tiny point, really, as it'd be no doubt put on the website.
Norma, could you pull the mic down just a bit? Thank
Sorry.
you. I'm hard of hearing.
Yeah, me too, so sorry about that. I think there's a word missing in paragraph 83 on page 5, just as a matter of accuracy, just a minor, very, very minor thing.
Okay, we'll take care of that. Thank you, Norma. Any other comments? No. Can I have a mover for the minutes then, please? Seconder? Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Norma. Okay. We move on to the recommendation table. There's any comments on the recommendation table? No? Norma?
Item 7 of the 31st of July meeting in relation to the draft accounts. I presume that the information that we've requested of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee of JCCs has come into the January meeting. It was either November, January, so just the deadline needs to be updated on that. And the other point that, and I'm not sure whether this is an issue, perhaps Rhys will advise, but I noted that the Audit Wales letter, am I on the right item? No, I'm probably on the next item, aren't I? Sorry, next item. So that's it, in terms of the
Okay,
actions.
well, we can
Thank you.
update those dates on the recommendation table, okay? Yeah, and then that, fine, okay. Right. So, that's gone. Right. Thank you. I'm going much quicker than Gareth. This is great. Yeah. No one's going to have time to finish their coffee. I'm sorry. Oh, you're not allowed coffee in here. Okay, we're on to the National Fraud Initiative. Who's speaking on that?
I am Chair, I believe, yeah.
Okay, Sarah, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sarah Jane Byrne. I'm an audit manager from Audit Wales. So I'm just going to give you a kind of quick overview of what the National Fraud Initiative exercise briefing is and what it covers. So you'll be aware we published our report on the 22-23 NFI exercise last October. And the purpose of the briefing that you've had is to provide an update on the current 24-25 exercise, and essentially to reaffirm the importance of the exercise and help support you have oversight of that exercise. We're taking a similar briefing to all Welsh NFI participants, so some of those have already been to Governance and Audit Committee, some are going over the next month or so. So you'll see the briefing explains what the National Fraud Initiative exercise is. So it's an exercise that's undertaken across the whole of the UK. It's done every 2 years. It's about sharing data electronically to help prevent and detect fraud. So Audit Wales leads the NFI exercise in Wales under the Auditor General's powers, and it's overseen by the Public Sector Fraud Authority for the UK. So the briefing provides an update, as I said, on the current 24 exercise on a national and a local level. So you'll see it sets out the local data on the matches received. It also sets out the outcomes reported by Welsh public bodies. I think it's in the report, it's as of July. Just a bit of an update. I understand that as of the end of October, the outcomes reported are now about 5.7 million. And just a kind of point of reflection, in the previous exercise in 22-23, 7.1 million outcomes were reported. So the briefing doesn't include detail on the Council's progress in processing the data matches and the outcomes recorded. and we'd encourage in a Governance and Audit Committee to kind of seek updates from relevant officers on that. The briefing also covers about the costs for the exercise. So there's no direct cost for participants to take part. Audit Wales receives funding to enable that participation and to cover the central processing. But the participant cost comes in really for, or the resources are around the data submission, doing the risk assessment and the investigations once those data matches are released. So the briefing also covers our future work on NFI. So as part of our previous report, we developed a self-assessment checklist to help bodies evaluate their arrangements. And I know that this is on the agenda today. And members of our team have been meeting with relevant contacts to understand participants' governance and follow-up arrangements. And this has included discussing the self-assessment. And I'm aware that a member of the team has recently met with Amy from SWAP to go through this. So the work is very much to help us understand bodies' governance and follow-up arrangements, to help identify any learning or any good practice or areas of concern that we may need to take back to the UK body, for example. And this will help shape our next national report, which is due next October. But I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, and if there are any really technical ones, I might have to come back to you, but I'll do my best. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Any questions? Jason.
Thanks, Chair. Just a quick one. That's on your the briefing notes you put out on pages 9 and 10. You've got like Exhibit 5, Newport City Council's AFL 24-25 data matches, and you've got Exhibit 6, both exactly the same writing, but there's two different columns, well, two different boxes, but virtually they're both the same. But why is it two different matches of data on them too, please?
Yeah, so they do look very similar. Essentially, what those two exhibits do is break down Exhibit 4. So Exhibit 5 shows all matches broken down by a risk score, and then Exhibit 6 focuses on matches in what we call key reports. So those, the NFI exercise calls key reports. So those key reports are those data matches that are where historically fraud or error is identified most often. So it gives Exhibit 6 gives the body a more targeted view of the data matches that are more likely to result in fraud or error being identified. So that I appreciate on the face of it, I did the same. They look very similar, but there is a slight distinction between the two. It's about the risk assessment and the success record of actually identifying fraud or error through those. So it's meant to kind of help assess the body's risk assessment.
It's just baffled me all, because like the blue badge, it says 498 in Exhibit 5, and then in 6 you've got 358, but it's both the same column. There's very high risks on both of them. And it was just threw me all, because they're all the same, but why is it just the numbers are different?
Yeah, if you go back to Exhibit 4, you'll see the two numbers there, which is the data match received and then the data matches based on those key reports where there's been that high success rate. So as I said, it is kind of trying to break that down in a little bit more detail. I mean, the key thing really is for the body to understand how the council is doing in terms of reviewing and assessing those data matches. And I guess just to highlight, it does. I didn't mention this, but in the briefing note, it's very clear that, and in our national report, that we're realistic that we don't expect a body to investigate and review all data matches. It's about having a risk assessment using information intelligence that the body is aware of, as well as the risk scores that are flagged through the NFI app to help them do this. So just to be aware of that, there isn't an expectation that a body absolutely has to investigate every single data match.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any more questions? I think it's probably remiss of me, Jason, not to comment on your backdrop. The two characters behind you are looking a bit puzzled on this report. Yeah. So, I've just got one question for you, Sarah, and it's just on 10, where it said 5 participating bodies had not yet closed any data matches. And I just wanted to ask you, Newport isn't one of them, is it?
No, it's not, Chair.
Okay. Any points? Comments? No? Okay. On this one, this is just a report back, so we don't have to actually take a decision. It's for information. Okay. So moving on to the next item 5, the anti-fraud, bribery and corruption. Okay, Amy.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so I've got the anti-fraud, bribery and corruption policy, so that's starting on page 25 of your agenda pack. So the policy has been brought to the committee to be endorsed ahead of its approval by Cabinet. The policy sets out the Council's commitment in regards to fraud, bribery and corruption, with the aim of the policy really to ensure public funds are protected from the risk of fraud. The Council, you'll see from the policy, is operating a zero-tolerance approach to fraud, and the policy outlines clear processes for fraud to be reported. Within the policy, we've strengthened the fraud response plan, and I believe that was a previous action raised by Audit Wales. And the fraud response plan outlines how the Council are going to deal with fraud. I'm not going to take you through the policy page for page. I'm going to assume that you've read it, but happy to take any questions. And I will just say I did notice that once transformed into a PDF, the formatting wasn't great, so I just need to tidy that up, so I'll do that.
Questions? Norma?
I think it's part question and part comment, I think. Okay. First thing I'd like to say is that I thought it was a really excellent document. It's really clear, and I think it covered all bases. It's just one word missing. Sorry, I sound really petty. In paragraph 11.3, I think there should be an if in the last sentence, if you just note that. But really excellent document. But what came up in my mind when I was reading it, and this is about the Governance and Audit Committee, it says that the Governance and Audit Committee monitors the effectiveness of whistleblowing, anti-fraud and corruption, and oversees progress in relation to counter-fraud. And the thought that hit me was, are we doing this well enough? In terms of anti-fraud and corruption, I think we are. I wasn't sure whether we get enough in terms of reporting on whistleblowing, and possibly in relation to counter-fraud. I was just wondering whether we are getting the right information to perform those functions, really. That was my points.
Okay. Rhys, you look like you're about to come in, or is Tracy going to fight you for it? Or Amy, you can...
Yeah, I'm happy to just do a little bit. I think you are getting your counter-fraud updates from me now quarterly, and you'll get an annual report. And I think the aim there is to bring together some of the other bits that happen in the council as business as usual, so your housing benefits, that sort of stuff, because that's not the bits that I'm doing, but we're going to pull that together for you and give you an annual report. Whistleblowing, I'll probably pass over to Rhys then, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. If that's the view of the committee, we can have a look at pulling something specifically together around whistleblowing. I know it's come up as a part of a recommendation in a number of different audits we've had probably over the last 2 years, and I know we've redone the whistleblowing policy and we've done a lot of training on it. But if the committee wants to have something specific on that, then we could probably look to do a one-off and then look to tie in with the work that SWAP are doing. So you have a joint report then on all of those things.
Yeah, Norma?
Yeah. Sorry, I think that would be really good. I just wanted to make sure we were doing what we should be doing according to the policy, really. That's fine. Thank you.
No, I think that would be a really good idea, because I think sometimes we get bandied about, like whistleblowing, what does it actually mean and what's it look like? And, you know, it can just be sort of a general term. Any other questions? Tracy, you've got a question? Or do you want to make a comment?
Oh yeah, Gareth will say wait to the end. Chair, just a point of clarification, I guess, about decisions as well. So anything that the committee says will be taken forward, and Cabinet will ultimately decide the policy. But specifically, I wanted to mention that We've worked with Amy on an FEIA to make sure that we're not adversely affecting anyone with particular characteristics. And I think we just need to identify making sure that the communications is really clear within the policy in order to meet those FEIA requirements, so we can make those amendments before final.
Our remit is to make sure the assurances are in place. Okay. Any other questions? I'm looking around. No, I've got a couple, Amy. One on page 37 under contractors, third parties. It's got third parties should have appropriate mechanisms. My question is what checks and balances have we got there? Is it part of a tender process that third parties have to have the necessary mechanisms in place?
I can't answer that definitively, but yes, my expectation would be in procurement documentation, tender documentation, any requirements like that, same as safeguarding, they'd all be outlined there.
Would that be part of the procurement process, Rhys?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. On page 43, we've got where the council, the last paragraph before of 6.1, where the council recognises and turns through regular training and knowledge sharing. The one in terms of like the subject, the one word that I wasn't seeing was mandatory training. Is that something we should be considering, mandatory training, as opposed to training?
So I think Myrian and I have discussed training for officers. We did training for fraud training for Audit and Governance Committee, didn't we? And I think we did talk about wider members. And I know Myrian and I have talked about staff. As to whether it wants to be mandatory or not, I'm going to throw that one to Rhys.
Thanks, Amy. We've got a suite of mandatory training which is agreed by CMT, so we can always consider that. I suppose my point on this would be making it mandatory for every member of staff probably not necessary, because quite a lot of our staff don't deal with things in which it could be an issue. Let us have a conversation outside of this, and we'll lose some consideration, and we'll put a written response back to the committee for the next meeting.
That would be really useful, because my comment would be that I wouldn't expect every employee, but I think at some level it has to be mandatory, because that's the assurance that we want. Okay, Amy?
I was just going to come in and say that I know Myrian's asked me to develop some information for the intranet and pulling this all together now, swapper in position, so that could possibly form the lowest level of information and guidance, and then maybe offer training to higher levels of staff.
My last one is on page 46, 11.5. The investigation officer. Who is the investigation officer?
So that will be on a case-by-case basis. So some instances of fraud will come to the attention of the council, and it may be that the council want to deal with that internally. So I would expect them to appoint an investigating officer. Myrian might correct me, usually a HR officer will be involved. If it comes to swap, so if we're asked to investigate the fraud, it will be one of our counter-fraud investigating officers that will lead it.
Comment, Rhys, would that, because when it says investigation officer, often I would expect that to be, it must be at a certain level, minimum level. Yeah,
so it very much is on a case-by-case basis. It very much depends on what's happened. There's a quite clear hierarchy within our investigatory and disciplinary process about how that would sit. In some cases, that might also be an external individual. We have a number of external investigators that we use for a variety of things, but it's very much on a case-by-case basis.
Norma.
For the record, I just want to be assured, and I'm quite sure it's a positive answer from Rhys on this, is that all investigators are appropriately trained, because that's vital, isn't it? And I'm sure it's a positive answer, but just for the record.
Yes. And I think that's why, as Amy says, on a case-by-case basis, because, you know, what you need is somebody who understands the subject matter that's been investigated as well.
Okay, any comments? Okay, I'm seeing no hands, therefore we've got the before us on this one that the committee, we note the report and endorsed by the Council's Governance and Audit Committee prior to its approval at Cabinet. Can I have a proposer for that? Thank you, Norma. Seconder? Thanks, Ray. Okay. Right, item 6 now. The NFI self-appraisal checklist. Who's taking us through that? Amy. It's the Amy show.
Me again. I was going to take you through what the NFI was, but I think Sarah Jane did that earlier, so I'll just get straight into the nitty-gritty. So the self-appraisal checklist is created by Audit Wales, and they encourage its completion, and then they recommend presenting it to those charged with governance, yourselves, to support with the scrutiny of the Council's NFI arrangements. I completed the checklist, and obviously you've got that as an appendix. I've shared it with Audit Wales, and as Sarah said, I've been working with one of their colleagues to, it's been great really working with him and getting that feedback. He's shared some bits of what other authorities do and stuff, so that's been great. So, yep, I've filled in the checklist, and we have got a couple of areas where I think we could further enhance what we're already doing. I think it was positive. I think it shows that we are doing something, but you know, there's always room for improvement. And those include reporting to committee. You've got an NFI update in my internal audit progress report today. Some more formal and proactive engagement with the service areas, because you've got each service area doing those matches. So the principal auditor and I are just going to sort of collate that together, and I've been working on a bit of a protocol document so that Sarah talked earlier about risk approaches to which matches we do, so I'm going to try and just sort of encompass that in a document so we've got some consistency, and then just a little bit more utilisation of the functions on the NFI web application, the tools they've got. So yeah, just some actions for us to take forward now. Again, I'm not going to take you through that questionnaire in detail, but happy to field your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Any questions? Norma?
I have a number, Chair. A general one, first of all, and then some specific ones in relation to the actions. If I go to the general one, if I look at areas for improvement that are in the paper, we talk about reporting to the committee, a more formal and proactive engagement with service users, and use of NFI web applications and toolkits. Now, a lot of these actions were due to be completed by the 30th of November, which is like the end of the week, really, isn't it, in fact? I just wanted some assurance that those had been addressed, because I think it wasn't very clear. And then on the specifics, Action 2, and this is, and I've raised this before, sometimes we talk about the future rather than the past, and I presume we're talking about the past when we're completing this checklist, even though we may refer to the future. But if I look at Action 2, I'm presuming that time was not recorded for the last NFI exercise, but it will be recorded going forward. Am I right there?
Do you want me to come in?
Sorry. Action 2. Have we committed specific resources? And you talk about time spent by internal audit relating to NFI will be recorded. So that means it hasn't been recorded in the past?
I think it has been recorded, but probably not consistently.
Right.
Consistently.
I was just wondering, was it yes or partly, the answer?
Partly, I think it would be fair.
It should be altered then, because we've got yes. I think that was my point. Is it partly?
Well, I think I'm sorry, Norma, I think the question is, have we committed specific resources to support the overall management? And I think the answer to that question is yes.
There's a sub-question, isn't it? If information is available, how much time was spent? So, yeah, okay. I'm happy to I get that, so don't worry. Action 4, again, I thought we seemed to be talking about the future rather than the past, and I wondered whether that should be partly. You've got does internal audit, oh, that's 3, sorry. 4, yeah, does internal audit monitor our approach for NFA and our main outcomes. So you've got yes, but we talk really about the future. You know, heads of service will be asked. Again, you know, is it yes or partly is my question.
Yes or partly?
I wasn't sure if I was waiting for another question.
No,
Sorry.
no.
Sorry.
No,
It's
no,
okay.
Norma's being kind.
Sorry,
One
thank you,
question
Norma.
at a time.
Action 5, there's no action there, is that right? And action 11, it says completed. So I just wanted to ensure assurance that everything is now documented. And the final one was action 26. Again, I wasn't clear whether that had been completed.
Right, I'm going to forget what you said now,
Sorry.
Norma, but let's take them one at a time. So the way I filled in the checklist was, we are doing things. I think we can improve it. So that's where I said, yes, we are doing things, but it could be improved. So I can understand how somebody might say, well, perhaps we should have put partly. So I'm happy to update those. But in general, we are doing these things. But where I've made other actions, it's to make sure that we're getting the most from this exercise as the council possibly can. But I do appreciate that, so I'm happy to take another look at it and just make sure that is yes or partly.
I think it's about being completely honest and transparent, you know, where we're a bit weak and what we're doing to improve it, really. I think some of it for me was partly and not yes. And yeah, okay, if you can have another look at it, that'd be quite helpful.
Yeah, I think the problem sometimes with these self-appraisal forms is almost like there should be 2 questions rather than 1, you know, like like 11, whatever, to 3A and 3B, because we see the over thing, and then because the B part is where we get the assurance that what's being done. You know, I think in all this, we recognise the direction of travel is a positive one. It's just this part we want assurance as to how it's going forward. But to do that, sometimes we have to understand the past and doing that. So that's, I think, maybe with the self-appraisal checklist, if we maybe split it a little bit, might help us. Remember, Amy, you've got to be kind to us. You're dealing with us. You know, we're lay people. You know.
I'm more than happy to take that comment on board, so that's fine. 5, I'm just having a quick look at this one now. I've got a feeling, looking at it quickly, that it's probably other actions are going to address it, but let me double check that, because I talk about reporting to committee. So I'll just double check that one. If not, if there needs to be action, then I can pop one in. What was your next number, Nora? Was it 11?
It says completed, and I was just looking, have we got assurance that everything is now documented now? That's action 11. I'm sure it is, but I just wondered.
I've got action 11 as partly. I've got partly in an action for that one.
Yeah, but I think, again, you know, it's back to my original point, I think it was. It's to be completed by the 30th of November. You with me? So one would hope to see that all completed by now. And then the last one was action 26, assurance that I think that was probably another 30th of November one. So assurance that that's been done.
So, full transparency, I probably need to extend that date. I've drafted that protocol document. That's got the risk rating approach that I'm suggesting. I've asked Marion to have a look at it. So I probably just need to extend it. So I'll review the I'll review the document with your comments on board and just update the dates and bring it back.
Yeah, because action 26, 30th of September was the deadline. So hopefully that's been completed.
Oh, sorry, 2 secs.
This is on page 62.
I wonder if that's a typo and it should have said November, Norma.
Should it?
I wonder, because we hadn't...
Okay.
Sorry. I think
Okay.
that's a typo.
Fine, okay.
I think the danger with us, Amy, is that when we see, because I've got exactly the same points that Norma was making, when I see a lot of 30th of November and the meetings today and doing that, I'm thinking, well, most of that should be done. I think in some ways it's better that you just more, you know, if it's the 31st of December or the 31st of January, you know, that's fine. But when we see the 30th of November, we're actually going to hold you to account to that. So you actually may be making a problem for yourself, you know. So, any other questions? Nope. Any comments? Nope. Okay. Then we've got that the proposal is that the self-appraisal checklist be noted and endorsed by the Council's Governance and Audit Committee. Have I got a mover on that? Thank you, Jason. Got a seconder? Thank you, Bev. Right. Okay, now we're on to the Public Services Ombudsman, item 7.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take us through this.
That's you, Tracy, is it?
Thank you. It is.
Gosh.
My colleague Mark is off, so apologies from him. So this report starts on page 65 of the pack. A quick reminder to the committee, you've already seen the annual complaints report, but at that time the Ombudsman's letter, I think, had been published and needed correcting, actually. So that was taken back for some corrections. And what we've done is we've included the letter, but we've also updated the report for completeness, and obviously that's part of the published pack. So the section of the report that relates is page 18 as you look at the complaints report, and I'll just talk you through some of the PSOW findings. So the Ombudsman writes to all local authorities every year with such findings. So across Wales you'll see that complaints to the Ombudsman rose by 20%, with social services, environment and housing being the main themes. For Newport, you'll see that 61 complaints were received and 62 were closed. That is correct, because obviously complaints can straddle outside of a year. That's slightly below the Welsh average, so 0.38 versus 0.45 at the Welsh average. Our intervention rate, so that is when the Ombudsman gets involved with one of our complaints and requires action, was 10%, which is a downward trend for us, which is pleasing, and outperforming our own target of 14%. Overall, relatively small numbers, so the percentages can vary, but also pleasing that we're below the Welsh average for interventions, which is 13%. So that puts us among the better performing councils for complaint resolution. You'll see some authorities have almost a quarter of their complaints with interventions at 24%. So pleasing there. Less pleasing, the compliance with the PSOW recommendations is only 27%. What actually happened there, we had some staff absences. I think I covered this last time, but we didn't have the letter. So we had dealt with and done what we needed to do with that complaint, but we hadn't told the Ombudsman within their targeted time, unfortunately. And although that is low performance, that's been corrected, and it does relate to a very small number of complaints, so single-figure complaints there. It's not big numbers, as evidenced by our small number of interventions overall. There were no complaints related to public interest reports, no breaches within code of conduct cases, and internally we've done a lot of work to strengthen reporting tools, targeted staff training and lessons learned, and I think that's covered elsewhere in the report, hopefully. So any questions on the Ombudsman's feedback?
Any questions? You got your light on, Norma, I'm assuming, or is Ray going to fight you? Norma?
First of all, just a comment. I thought this was a great report, and it's good to see Newport's performance in this area. And I was really pleased to see increase in compliments for social services. A good performance overall, because this is a very challenging area, as we well know. And what is good, we can see that the actions that you're taking are paying back the dividends. And I was really pleased in terms of some of the issues I've raised previously about marginalised communities, that I can see things are improving in that area. The only point, and I struggled a bit because on this, is I noticed that the cross-cutting themes came out of communication, well-being, transparency and accountability, and I think this was on page 87. And I tracked this back to the actions on page 74. 4, which I've got before me here, and I couldn't quite correlate them, and I just wondered whether we need to be looking again at those and perhaps think about actions in those areas. You've got your actions for improvements in 25-26 listed on page 74. Some of these points might well be in there, but it wasn't particularly evident to me. I think it's just something that perhaps officers could take away and just have a look at.
Did you say page 74?
Yeah, on page 87...
Yeah, no, 87, I understand. Page 74 in my pack is the contents.
Is the actual document?
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual paper. Yeah, but you've got actions for improvement at the end of that.
Yeah.
And I was trying to relate the issues raised on page 87 back to those actions.
Right.
And it wasn't, you know, they may be in there, but it wasn't particularly clear to me. And perhaps it's just something to take away and just look at to make sure that communication and the well-being and transparency are addressed somewhere along the lines in terms of actions.
Thanks, Norma. And also the cross-cutting themes, I think maybe in this report appear to come from nowhere, but that's through analysis and deep reading through all of the complaints. I think that's a fair comment. I'm happy to take that on board. I think communication's definitely in our actions. We've done loads around communication, but with the other pieces, I think that's harder to intertwine, and we take that feedback back.
You know, I have to say that I think the report, I agree totally with Norma, it's great. Really is, you know, you can see again, you can see the direction of travel over the years, and it's good. I think just fine-tuning it's always good. I've got a couple of on number 7, page 75, where you've got where it's got under complaints 358 refused. Could that read 358 not valid?
Absolutely. That came up at scrutiny actually earlier this week. Refused is a technical term. They are called refused, but I think it is important when we use that term to explain what that means, because generally it's because they can't be considered. One example is they're literally not the council's complaints. They're for another organisation. But I think, although that is a technical term, we need to use that term. We should explain that term where that appears. So thank you for picking that up.
Mike?
On that point, is it the case that complaints can be refused because they fall outside of a time frame?
Ray, could you just pull the mic closer to you, just because of people who are...
Yeah, my question about refused complaints, does that encompass complaints that fall outside a certain time frame, 6 months or something? Do you happen to know if there is a statute of limitations, for want of a better word? On
there is a limitation, but if you're going to ask me what it is, I don't know on the fly, but I can find that out. But there are a number of technical reasons a complaint is refused, which is that it's out of time, it's not for us, the council. There's something else about it being on behalf of another person, but we can provide some more information about that if that's...
I'm sure the information exists. It's just that I noticed I was copied into a complaint that was... The response was, I think,
out of time.
Out of time, yeah. 6 months, I think it was.
Oh, was it? Okay. I would need to check on that. I'm sure that was in the report last year, but I don't want to delay committee while I look for it. But that does sound about right.
Thanks.
Reece?
Yeah, I think it's probably worth... I think it is in the policy, isn't it? But it's probably worth us just doing a kind of sheet that comes, a written response that comes back into the committee. It just says these are all the refuse means this, and these are all the criteria around it. So you're really clear about what that means.
Because, just to follow up, because I think if people realise that complaints are going to be refused, it might actually stop them putting the complaints in, and it might help your numbers somewhat. So educating the public might be a good thing, and the councillors.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think also, you know, it's picked up in there, and Tracy's mentioned it, hasn't she, around the communications bit of this as well. I think that also, we need to communicate with people better about the complaints policy and the compliments and comments, and, you know, because we want feedback. Feedback is good for the organisation.
I guess there's no refusal of compliments.
It's absolutely not a deadline on compliments, no, right?
Yeah, I don't like the word. I understand it's technical, but I think with comms, if we get it, because I think if I'm, people in Newport, we see refused, and you're thinking, what's going on? So, but if we clarify, it just helps everyone in doing that. For me, I'm glad you really picked up, on the 27% with Newport, because in looking at the table on page 111, you've got Caerphilly at 50%, Flintshire at 91%, with similar populations of Newport, and then now Newport's got the 27%. But I'm expecting that to be vastly different next year.
I was nearly said 100%. Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But again, to clarify for the committee, the individual complainants had their response. We just didn't let... I know, I say just, it was a requirement and we should have. We didn't let the PSOW know.
Sounds like a worse own goal when you did the work and you just didn't get credit for it.
It's exactly that. That's frustrating, isn't it? But that's, that's a lesson learned, that was with an individual who left, and we need to get a process that makes sure that doesn't happen again.
Okay. And when we were on this item, I promised myself I wouldn't mention that this report never mentions things about councillor complaints and doing that, so I'm not going to mention that. But I think 1 year, when I'm about 80, maybe we'll be able to collect that data, because I think most of that does actually go through the councillors, and we don't actually see that. And that works both ways as well, because I've seen where councillors have been complimented as well on behalf. Ray, I'm sure you want to say something now.
Only that I recall discussing that at the previous meeting or the one before that. So yeah, it would be good to see some data on that, but I guess we'll wait.
Mike, I can see you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I think on that you just want to guard against drifting into the territory of the Standards Committee, because this report will be presented there as well with regard to member complaints, and the Standards Committee will consider that. So whether it's appropriate to consider that in two different forums, and whether that's within the scope of this committee, I'm not too sure.
Sorry, Chair. When we're talking about member complaints, it's not complaints against members, it's the complaints that the members put in. Is that?
Did you hear that, Mike?
I did hear that, yeah. I mean, is that... do we hold that data separately?
I think that was the issue. I think that was the issue, Mike. I think members put in a lot of issues and borderline complaints, I suppose. We complain about the potholes not being fixed and whatever. But it's whether it's actually a complaint, deemed to be a complaint, or because we put it into a different channel.
I think we've got a general direction of travel on this, which I think is good. But I think if we just keep raising it, I don't think it's going to go away and doing that. But appreciate it's a direction of travel.
I think previously we'd said we'll look at that for next year. This is in fact the same report you've already seen in that respect. So we did that the meeting before last, but the PSOW is the difference. But we have noted that, yeah.
Yeah, Tracy, I have high hopes. I've seen how the report's improved over the last few years. It's been, so I live hopefully. Okay, was any other comments? I'm looking round. No. Jason, you got to smile when you got those lights behind you, mate. Okay, what we've got to do is, the proposal is the Governance and Audit Committee is asked to consider the contents of the report regarding the Council's engagement with the Public Services Ombudsman for Wales during 24-25. Got a proposer? Thank you, Jason. Seconder? Thanks, Ray. Okay. Right. On to 8. This has got to be you, isn't it, Laura?
Thank you, Chair. So this report is the usual Treasury Management Monitoring Report that details the Treasury management activities that has been taking place in the first half of the 25-26 financial year. So it shows that the Council's borrowing position has reduced from 168.4 million as at the end of March to 155.3 million at the end of September. This is because we took out £40 million worth of short-term borrowing for cash flow purposes at the end of the last financial year, which we were able to pay back very soon within this financial year. And this has then been offset by the fact that we've actually taken out some new loans from the PWLB, totaling 25 million, and one shorter-term loan from another local authority of 5 million. So we did this when the rates took a bit of a dip for a very short period of time, and we took advantage of those favourable rates. We did this borrowing in advance of need, so we've been able to reinvest that money, which is why our investment balances have actually gone up, and the net borrowing position has reduced by 40.3 million to 115.9 million at the end of September. So we don't expect to be in this position at the end of the financial year. The authority has a large borrowing requirement, and this will continue to be the case as we use our resources, our reserves, and our capacity to be internally borrowed reduces, and as well as we go through the Council's capital programme. So we will need to do further borrowing, not just to replace our existing borrowing as they mature, but also we will need to take additional new borrowing as we use our reserves as planned and our capital programme. So the rates are reviewed daily, and alongside our cash flow our cash flow forecasts, and in line with our Treasury advisors, we take a view if there is a rate drop that it is advantageous for us to do that as per the Council's Treasury strategy. So the report gives an overview of the external financial context and confirms that the Bank of England base rate remains at 4%. And the report also details the Council's performance against the prudential indicators and shows that we've complied with all our indicators as at the end of September. So the report asks the Audit Committee to consider the report and provide any feedback before this report is presented at Council.
Thank you, Laura. Any questions? Norma?
Thank you, Chair. Two questions from me. First, in relation to paragraph 14, in terms of the investments that the authority holds, one of the things that occurred to me was, what is our return on these investments, and particularly the directly owned property that we have, where we've got an investment of 9.5 million. I think we have raised previously about the loans to developers, and I understand that the Chair has had some information on that. The shareholding, obviously, in Newport Transport is minimal, relatively minimal compared to others. But I was just wondering whether it's a positive return on investments, particularly from our property that we own, such as offices and commercial units. And my other question was, on page 40, in the Lobo loans, what's the level of risk, I was wondering, in terms of call-in options being exercised? You know, what's the chance of that, them being exercised, the call-in being exercised? Really? So those are my two questions on the. But I must say, I do find this report quite easy to read as a non-financial specialist. I have to say, I do quite enjoy it, believe it or not.
Thank you. So in terms of the directly owned property, I would have to check that. I believe it is positive, but I wouldn't be able to give you a direct return on investment. I think we brought this to the committee this time last year, but obviously things would have changed because there's been a whole other year. So I can provide an update for that. And then in terms of the Lobo loans, we have 3 Lobo loans, and we have been told from our Treasury advisors that 2 of them potentially might be called. So we have 2 Lobo loans, I think, that have call dates in January, and one that has a call date in February, I believe. And we believe that there is a potential that they might call on that, one of which would be in February and one which would be in January. We have been in contact with our Treasury advisors. They're very good at keeping us up to date. And we'll just keep reviewing the situation. And again, if the rates do drop, then we'll take a view at that point whether it would be good for us to take a new loan in order to replace that.
Rhys?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really pleased you find it an easy report, because even I struggle with the report sometimes. So I just pick up on the assets, the directly owned assets. I think it's more complicated than that. So just bear with me. There's the budget associated with those assets will appear in the revenue report, which sits within Tracy's budget. So that gets reported through to Cabinet on a quarterly basis. I think as far as and Laura, feel free to tell me I'm wrong here, but as far as this report is concerned, it's really difficult to say. Those are assets of that value that we hold. We will not realise the value of those assets unless we dispose of them. So there might be a revenue budget that appears because we are leasing them out, but actually the value on the books will only be realised if we dispose of those assets.
Yeah, so
Or is that just a book value in
that's the value on our balance sheet, the 9.5. But we are able to calculate a rate of return, I think, between the income that, like a yield that we're from the expenditure and the income that we receive.
You're looking puzzled, Norma. When people start talking about property values on balance sheets, I always think it's probably one of the biggest cheats going. So I go blurry right at that point. So
I think what I'd like assurance on is that we're actually making a reasonable return from these assets for the authority. If we're not, we need to review whether we need to dispose of them. And I think that's my point. You know, it's about the management of the assets, not how they appear on the accounts, I think.
Sorry to cut across you there, Norma. I think as far as the Governance and Audit Committee is concerned, you just need to understand the contents of the report. The Council holds assets for all sorts of reasons, not just the value that they return. You know, we have assets of strategic importance that we hold, you know, for community benefits, etc., etc. So they don't. So I think it's probably too simple just to say for an answer. But Laura can provide the yield return, so you can answer your question. But I think it's just, I was trying to say it's a bit complex.
I get that, and you know, I think the way I was viewing it was this was property that we were letting out, not using. But it's both, presumably.
We do hold property we let out. It is more than that. We do hold property we let out. But I'll just give you an example. We have business incubator units.
Yeah.
We do not get a market return for those business incubator units.
Yeah, I understand.
okay, any other questions? Nope. Any comments from anyone? I'm not seeing any hands. So, Laura, I get to say something. I love your reports. Thank you. It's, you know, it's another one in 10 years. I might understand it, you know. But, and I also want to say well done to the team, because borrowing money when the rates were down, that's a good commercial. That's good commercial practice, good commercial decision. So, and I know the game's going to change because you can't keep, because as we can't keep borrowing our own money from reserves, you know, we've got to pay it out. So I know that's going to change. But, you know, but you've been doing a great job so far, so I'm fully expecting you to continue. No pressure. Okay, with this report, we've got to note the report on the Treasury Manager activities during the first half of the year period of 25-26 and offer the Governance and Audit Committee an opportunity to provide feedback on this situation. Subsequent report to Cabinet. Can I have a proposal for that? Thank you, Ray. Seconder. Thank you, Bev. Great. Okay, now I think we're on back to the Amy show.
You are back with me. Okay, so I feel like there's quite a lot of information in my progress report this quarter, so just bear with me, but I'm going to take you through it. So we've got the Q2 progress report for internal audit activity starting on page 145 of the agenda pack. So you've got a summary page on page 152, so that's indicating a reasonable, indicative, rolling annual opinion, and outlines that there was no high corporate risks to bring to the committee's attention. We have got 2 limited assurance reports issued in Q2. We had 1 priority 1 action, that's your previous criticals, and 5 priority 2 actions, that's your significance. And I'll come back to the detail on those as we go through. Page 153 to 156 is showing you the rolling audit plan. So you've got the audits we've completed, those in progress, those waiting to go live, and those future proposed. At this point, I just wanted to let committee know that I am aiming to have further planning meetings with heads of service, they're going to love me, in December, to update that rolling plan. So we're going to make sure that the audits we've got there, do they still need to be there? Are there other things that have come up to push the other ones down and keep that risk-based dynamic approach? We've got coverage of our rolling audit plan shown on 157 to 160. There's a variation of coverages and showing you different bits. I just wanted to pick up really that one of those is coverage against the corporate risks. We have got some gaps there. I think it's normal to have gaps there. But as part of the planning meetings, I am going to have those conversations with heads of service. You know, so if we don't have an audit where there's a corporate risk, do we understand why? Other assurances, scrutiny, looking at it. And actually also, perhaps we did the audit last year. Obviously, we're new in swap. My coverage is only showing, sorry, the year before. My coverage shows last year, but we could have done audits previously that we can take assurance from. But I'm looking to have those conversations and make sure we've got a really good understanding of our coverage. Coming back to the 2 limited assurance opinions then, they related to the purchasing cards piece of work we did and overtime. The priority 1 action came from the purchasing card audit, and that related to the sharing of card details. And then other findings I wanted to bring to the committee's attention in relation to purchasing cards was expenditure and the use of the purchase card not being in line with the policy, and we had poor receipt retention and issues with reviewing transactions. We are intending to do some further work in this area after Christmas, as this is the second limited assurance that's been given in regard to purchasing cards. And I have suggested to management that we carry out some continuous assurance work. So that means rather than sort of doing audits at a point in time, we'd review the P-card data, we'd do the testing on a continuous assurance so that we can give the Council the assurance that those control frameworks are being strengthened and they are effective. And I'm jumping around my report a little bit now, but while we're on P-cards, you'll also see that one of the investigations that we've just commenced is also in this area. So I did wonder if committee wanted to take a view on whether they wanted some additional information in this area. But I suggested continuous assurance to exec board last week, and they were fully on board and supportive of that approach. I think that will be good. The priority 2 action in relation to overtime related to compliance with working time regulations, and they were implementing some reporting controls so they could manage that better. So that was a positive. Okay, so page 162 of the agenda pack talks about our feedback scores. I'm really pleased to say that is at 100%, but I think I would be doing a disservice if I didn't mention that the return rate isn't great. So as part of the planning meetings, I am hoping to draw attention to the fact that, like Rhys said earlier, all feedback's good, isn't it? We want to know what we're doing well, what we can improve on, so we'll give that a push. Action tracking then on page 163 of the agenda pack, recognising we have got a backlog of actions, previous processes, followed them up at the end of the year. So what we had was a batch bulk upload to get in. We are making progress with them. We've closed 6. We've got 7 with revised timescales, and the team have got a focus of looking at those 44 that are 99 plus days overdue. So focusing on the ones that look the most overdue. If you remember, committee, you asked for a more detailed update on the gifts and hospitality actions in particular. So I've given you that on page 164. So 3 of those actions have been closed with all the relevant evidence. 7 have got revised timescales, but I think it's important to note here that when I was getting the information and the evidence, I had assurance that things were moving and things were being taken to exec board, CMT. We extended the timescales to allow for that process to finish, to make sure that all those things go through the appropriate governance channels and we've got a finished product. So I was happy to extend those timescales to allow for that to happen. There was one action where we were seeking evidence. I think there was some communication to schools. I'm just waiting for that action to come back, but I was verbally assured that that has been done. So that was good, I thought. And then finally, from page 165 onwards, you've got your counter-fraud update. That sort of details to you our proactive works in progress. The one investigation in terms of swaps role has come to an end, and we've commenced another. I just mentioned that in relation to the purchasing cards. And then finally, new to this progress update, you have your NFI update, which gives committee an update in relation to the data matches that are being completed across the council. I think it's fair to say that we do need to get some more of those matches done, and obviously I mentioned earlier in the other agenda item, I have made that protocol document so that we can understand where are our priorities. Someone asked Sarah Jane earlier around what those key reports were. One of those can be where the data goes out of date quickly, so we really need that sort of risk-based approach. Which matches do we want to get done first, and then feed that back to the service area. So I'm pleased to say work in that area is happening. That's me done. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions? Norma?
Thank you, Chair. I have 2 points to make. I note that we have 3 limited assurance reports. I wasn't really clear what appointeeship was about, so it'd be good to have some clarity in terms of what the nature of that report was. And my thought really on these limited assurance reports, I mean, I as a committee member would like to call in, the staff, the officers concerned, so that we can at least have assurance that the actions are being taken forward. But the other point, I think as a committee member, and this happens in another organisation that I'm involved in, when these reports come out, it's quite useful if they could be sent to us, because I think we can see the context, because what we don't see is the context of these reports. And is there any reason why we can't? Because I certainly see them in another authority, and as soon as they come out, the committee is sent copies so we know exactly what the issues are and what needs to be done. So I think that would be helpful. If you could come back to that. And the other point I would like to make is that it really concerns me that we've got 57 management actions that are over 30 days. And there are 69 priority 1 and 2 actions outstanding. Now, to me, those are high-level actions, and I know you're not alone as an authority in terms of things like this, but to me, when you get an audit report, if I was a director of an organisation, I would be, of a team, I would be wanting the actions implemented as soon as possible. And, over 30 days, to me, is quite a long time. Anyway.
Appointeeships, I'm probably not going to do this, it's justice, but it's where the council holds a statutory responsibility for the finances, because they don't have that capacity or ability to do that.
So I thought it was something like that. I just wanted some clarification. And in social services we talk about. Yeah, I'm with you.
And funnily enough, one of the new members of the team at the moment has been following those actions up this week. So she's been doing that and liaising with the team. So I'm hoping by January we'll see some of those clear off. In terms of call-ins, I know we've talked about this, haven't we, with the swap way of working. I'm not going to tell the committee they can't have a call-in because it's under your remit. I think what I'd like to see perhaps going forward is the officer coming to today's meeting, so that can happen more on a live basis. So with PCARs and overtime, you'd have a designated officer to be here, so I tell you the findings and then they can give you the assurance that they're working on those. It makes it live, but I'll leave it to you guys' remit to decide whether you call in or whether we bring the officer in at the same time. In terms of the reports being sent to you, again, we're in this sort of straddling the previous processes and the swap processes. So what will happen when it's a swap audit report, the one-page exec summary will be built into my report, so you will see that one-page report. So you get that exec summary, which I think will give you the context, the detail, you'll see the objective, you'll see the scope. I think that will help you massively. That information is also going to be available on your on our audit board system. So as I issue a final report, you can view it. You don't have to wait for it to come to committee, and that will be all of them. So that will be the reasonables. Obviously, in this committee meeting, we could talk about audit. I could talk about audit all day long. We don't have time for that, so that's why I bring you the high priority stuff, the limited assurances. But you will have the capability to see the one-page reports, which is an exec summary in the dashboard system. And I know I'm going to give you guys some training in January, so we can show you that. Moving on to the actions then. The 57 management actions over 30 days, I don't know if they're overdue. So it might be that they're all done and dusted. They were probably 30 days overdue when I uploaded them into the system because of the way that it was previously done. It was left till the end of the year to chase them up. I think the process going forward is much better because we are what I'd like to do is the green bar where it says due in 30 days. I'd like to be emailing heads of service and saying, your actions are due in 30 days. Could you provide an update? So we're getting ahead of the game there. What I have done is asked our technical systems guys if they can do something in the meantime for me to show you guys which ones we've chased and made contact with and which ones we just haven't got to, so that you can see that there's not just 69 actions sat there doing nothing. We are making that progress. We've made some really good progress in adult social care. The new member of the staff has been doing that as part of sort of getting used to the team and the ways of working. I just need the committee to bear with me. We just need some time to contact everyone and chase those actions up. But it doesn't mean they're not done. And what I would say is of the 14 that we've managed to chase up, the older ones, they are done because they are old. So I'm confident that I don't think the council's just sat there doing nothing and not implementing the actions. It's just that we haven't got to them to say, have you done this yet? But Norma's looking puzzled, so please come back to me, Norma.
Can I come back? Let's do deal with the actions first, because I think as a committee, we need assurance that our actions are done within a time frame, and that particularly the high priority ones are certainly done. So I think that's what we are looking for. I don't like to see actions outstanding and particularly high priority ones, because that makes me feel uncomfortable because of the risks around it. So I think as a committee member, that's what I'd like to see. Going back to the limited assurance reports, I understand you've got a system and we need to tap into it, etc., etc. But I think that, don't forget, we, particularly as lay members, you know, we're not in the organisation, so it's really important when a limited assurance report comes out that we're actually notified of this and how to access it. You look a bit puzzled there, Amy. Am I sort of contradicting something you've said there?
No, can you leave that with me just to see if that's doable? Is that okay? I'm sorry, the limited assurance will always be in my update. So you will always be told of the limiteds and the no's, and they will be in the report. I think what you're asking me is, can you have that as I issue it to the officers? And I think I need to regroup and see if that's doable.
I'm not sure whether I'm clear enough, really. I think that, and this is practice I have, I experience elsewhere. As soon as one comes out, the committee members are told, here's the report, this is how you access it. So in between committee meetings, we can actually look at the report. So we're well prepared. We've seen the context and everything. So when we come to committee members, we're well prepared to discuss that report.
Reece?
Is that clear?
Yeah.
Is that fair? I mean, I can...
Yeah, I think if I'm hearing this right, though, I think what Amy has said is in January there will be training to show you how to access the system, and as soon as they're done, they'll be on the system, so you'll be able to access them straight away anyway. So I think yes, Norma, I think is the answer, but Amy has to do the session with you to show you how to do it.
I understand that, but I'm just trying to say that we need a notification that's there.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Norma. Any other questions? Okay. Amy, some comments and questions from me. I think as we get used to the new system, I think the training that we have in January is really, really important for us to understand it, because that's where we're going to get some of our assurance from. Okay. But in the meantime, before that training and everything, and as it's all being populated, we are not. I don't feel that I have all the facts in doing that. It's just because it's new systems. We always had a default with the committee that if there's a limited assurance, we ask people to come and see us, because we want to understand what's going on, to see if as a committee we can help understand, so we can see what's going forward. So I think for us as a committee, for colleagues, I think in the meantime, we should revert back to calling, we've got this report, this limited assurance again from the procurement cards. I think we need to have them into the meeting. I think they should come in. To be honest, if we put it in really common language, it's a second offence. It's not a good look. So I think we need to go for that. And I think we just need to revert to the almost the default that we did have until we've got used to the swap system, where we can see, because I understand where we will be able to see the reports, but we can't see them at the moment. And when you can't see it, there isn't the assurance. So for me, for us as a committee, I would sort of like to put the moves that we actually invite the P cards people. Okay, Rhys, I won't go any further.
Without trying to prolong this meeting longer, if you're going to call in P cards, it'll be Myron and me. And if you're going to call in for overtime, it'll be Tracy. So if you have got any questions you want to raise now.
And Rhys, I would just add that and it's personal preference of the committee, by the call-in, you're waiting another sort of 2-3 months to get them back in, whereas I think Rhys is making a good point. You've got the office. I think it's good to have the officers here when I'm telling you the findings, or hopefully when you've got the one-page report in front of you, so we can have that sort of almost dynamic conversation there, and at the same time.
Rhys, I love the attitude. Thank you. Because the one thing that I get quite frustrated about is when, if I use the term loosely, I see the foot soldiers coming in there and the officers seem to be about 5 miles behind. So no, it would be great to have that once we've got that report, the page, into because we could cover that in the next meeting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Or I'm quite happy to answer any questions you might have now.
The issue I've got, Rhys, is I'd like to see the report. I'd like to see the nature, because normally what we would do is we would see before, when we've had limited or unsatisfactory reports, we've actually seen the report, and that gives us, whereas really what we're just going to be asking you general stuff, and I'd rather have some specific, if my colleagues are happy with that. Yeah?
I agree entirely, Chair. You're
okay.
Absolutely.
Is that acceptable to my colleagues? Hey. Jason, don't nod with the reindeers.
He's nudging me. He's behind me. That's what's happening.
Yeah. Okay, so can we leave that with you to get that on for the next meeting? That would be handy. Thank you. Okay, so we've got, and I think also, Amy, for me, getting the training in as soon as we can would be really helpful. To do that, so that I'd like to really be not an expert on your dashboard, but I'd like to be competent. Okay, and I'm not. Okay. Right. Okay. Any other questions? Nope. Comments? Nope. Okay. We've got here the proposal that the internal audit Q2 progress report is noted by the Governance and Audit Committee. Can I have a proposer, please? Thank you, Jason. Seconder. Thank you, Norma. And now, thank you, everyone. Now I think we're to the work programme. I think in terms of the work programme, we'll just be moving the risk to January.
Yeah, that's correct, Chair. So the corporate risk register is going to be moved to January. and the call-ins that have been suggested today will be added to the work programme as well, yeah.
Great, thank you very much. And then before I do the... Oh, okay. I tell you what, I've got too many hands, Tracy. I'm going to go to Ray. Sorry. Come on, Ray.
Okay. Looking at the agenda or the items rather, for the 22nd of January, it's a very busy meeting. I probably should have raised this earlier, but the violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, I believe was supposed to be in this meeting. Do we know, I can guess, but do we know why it's been deferred to the next meeting?
Do you want to deal with this, Rhys?
Yeah. Yeah. So the chair asked for it to be deferred in the briefing because one of the key things that the committee had spoken about previously was the number of members who've undertaken that training, and there's a training session on Monday. So he didn't think it was, and that was the conversation we had in the briefing. Didn't think it was worth having the session tonight.
That was my guess.
Prior to that training on Monday.
So it's a good decision.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ray, it was Gareth and I. There was 20 people who attended the training, and it included Norma, Gareth, myself. 17 councillors attended mandatory training on thing. We want to see who turns up in December. So, you know, that's why we've asked it to be pulled, because if it came through, it means the next meeting we'll have a better understanding.
Do you want to see who turns up or who doesn't turn up?
Chair, I just wanted to bring the committee's attention to, we've added panel performance assessment to the January work programme, which wasn't on there previously. The council has its panel performance assessment in March, so we think it's important that we discuss that at committee, and if helpful we could have a session before committee to take members through that as we have previously as well, if that's helpful.
Ray?
Well, we've got Rhys. Can I just ask a question, just referring to mandatory training? What are the sanctions if people don't do mandatory training?
When you say people, Councillor Mogford, who...
Okay. Councillors.
I might refer this, I might step out of the way and let Mike answer this, because I'm not 100% sure. I think it's more of a reputational issue with some of this training. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing... But we're looking at this elsewhere at the moment, actually, and there's a report to Cabinet member being prepared on this, as Democratic Services and I have been consulting in various places around the organisation about member training generally, and what we're looking at doing is categorising member training into essential, recommended, and desirable. And that will be going through to the Cabinet member. I mean, the bottom line. I mean, to put this, there's not any way of compelling a member to attend a training course. There are some courses that we strongly recommend that members attend on a reasonably regular basis. I mean, probably the foremost one being the training on the code of conduct that members do attend. But if they don't, then there's not any specific rule or sanction as such which requires them to do so. I mean, having said that, if it was apparent that a member did need to attend a training course for whatever reason, I mean, please don't ask me to think of an example of that off the top of my head, and there was a concern that a member was missing out on training that they really needed to do, there might be a conversation with their group leader. I mean, again, most obvious one being the code of conduct training, having regard to the group leader's duty to ensure the promotion of standards. But I'm not sure there's any sanction you can apply to a member who doesn't attend training. Does that deal with the question? Okay,
Mike. I'm not going to go down this avenue, okay? Because if a councillor doesn't attend it, for us as a governance and audit committee, as colleagues on this committee, good governance means that councillors do mandatory training. Yeah, and I think in terms of and I think for us looking for that assurance, and if we can't get that assurance, then as a committee, then we have to take the next step up as to ask, councillors, and we would probably up it to the chief exec as to why, but it's just not a good look, is it? When you think about it.
Well, absolutely.
Can I come back on that? I mean, as I say, I'm not sure. We're specifically moving away from the word mandatory because there isn't any legal basis for it. It is open to this committee to make observations, which can be reported in the appropriate place if it has concerns that members aren't attending training, which it considers that they should be attending. But I think the use of the word mandatory and mandate it has got the potential to be a little bit misleading. Thank you.
For that clarification, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I noticed that it is on Monday. Is it via Teams as well, or we've got to attend the civic as well for it?
Jason, this isn't my remit. Contact Democratic Services. They'll help you. I've never seen work programme go on for so long. I'll let you sort that out with Democratic Service. I'm sure that they will. Oh, Leanne's denying all knowledge. Jason, I'm sure someone will be in touch to help you with the time. Yeah, if not, Ray's looking really helpful. The other thing I just want to do on the work programme is, again, I think we've got the draft accounts down for January. I think there's a good chance that may be March. So I would rather to see it on March because it looks like we're going to have a full meeting on January anyways. So if we could do that, I think that would be helpful to everyone. Okay, good. Okay, well, sorry, Amy.
One more from me, sorry. We've got the unaccompanied asylum seeker children's imprest account, and I think that's the service bringing an update. I'm just conscious that you haven't had my update from the follow-up. So is it worth waiting for me to give you my update and then asking the service to come in? I'm just slightly concerned that you'd get their update before you get my update of the assurance from the follow-up. That seems around the wrong way.
You look like you want to say something, Rhys.
Well, I suppose all I would say, based on the previous conversation, personally, I would suggest to the committee you probably need Amy's update with the service area here to respond to the update. So you haven't got two separate conversations. I
absolutely agree. I think we just need to change that because we need your report first. Okay? Good. Okay, lastly, before we do Dave next meeting, I'd like to just thank the officers and everyone who's done all the work in preparing all this. Thank you very much. And the date of the next meeting, 22nd of January?
22nd of January.
Thank you. Okay, meeting closed. Thank you, everyone.